The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Monday. It's July 8th. Thrilled to be here. We have been sort of on an extended hiatus. We did come back and do a live show on Wednesday with Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, but that's the first show that we did and the last show that we did for essentially 3 weeks. So it's very exciting to be back here. I have so much to share with you and so much going on here. This is going to be a very exciting week here at Autism Live. I hope that if you're watching us live that you will participate with us. This entire show is meant to be interactive. Emily's going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate with us here at the show. And while she does that, I'm going to remind you that there's only one way to watch us live. That's still at www.autism-live.com. When you go there, there is a box. We're trying to leave it open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week now, so that even if you're watching the show in a previously recorded version, because the show does play there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it's only live for 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday. So we sort of interrupt that feed. But no matter when you tune in, you should be able to now type in a question, a comment, a suggestion, whatever you'd like into that box, hit enter. It will show up on my screen the next time that we are here in the studio. You guys wrote in overwhelmingly the last 3 weeks. It's going to take us more than this week to get to all the things that you guys have asked, but we will. We will get to all of it one way or the other. Also want to remind you that when we last left you, one of the things that we had talked about is that Elysian Fields Farms is getting ready to have a big event that is coming up. Is it this weekend that it's coming up? Next weekend that it's coming up. Elysian Fields Farms, a really amazing place, and they are inviting the Horseboy people to come. They'll be doing a screening of the Horseboy film on next Friday night. It's only $5 to attend that, and then you can decide if you'd like to participate in a very special workshop that weekend and learn how to do the Horseboy techniques from the Horseboy people themselves. If you are not familiar with Horseboy, I would encourage you to look online and see on our YouTube page. We did an interview with the original creator of Horseboy on the show about this time last year. Absolutely amazing. And they have a really unique way of working with children on the autism spectrum and horses, and sometimes they take them surfing as well, but that's in conjunction with other programs. But they introduce the entire family to horses, and they do it in a very loving and gentle, it's really amazing. And I want to encourage you to check that out. And if you're at all interested in becoming proficient in the Horseboy technique, then I would encourage you to go to this workshop that they're having at Elysian Fields Farms. Really amazing. And you can see their website up there. And we had the opportunity to interview the people from Elysian Fields Farms, so you can look at that interview as well. I think it's a very exciting opportunity. But you do want to register as soon as possible if you want to do that workshop. So there, you have that information. So thrilling to be back. And as I said, I've got so many different things to talk about. and so many things on my mind that I didn't get a chance to share with you guys, and I hope the same is true for you. So write in and let us know what you're thinking about. Okay, one of the things that we like to do every morning, we call it our little warm-up. We start with something called the jargon of the day. And today we're introducing a jargon term that, as strange as it may seem, apparently we have never done before on the show. We talk about lots of the different skill areas that we try to get our children proficient in, and one of the different things that we talk about is cognition. So today we're talking about cognitive skills. Let's take a look at what that actually means. So we've got our actual definition here. Skills that give us abilities to gain meaning and knowledge from experience and information. They allow us to think about new information, process and speak about it, and apply it to other previously acquired information. All right, that's pretty dense. Let's see if we can water it down a little bit for our working definition. Cognitive skills are brain skills that make it possible for us to think, remember, and learn. So if you think about it, I remember when my son was diagnosed with autism, he was 2.5 and he had regressed into autism. And I remember thinking, okay, is this child teachable? And is anything, I always describe it that it was like he was a dry erase board, that we would write things on the dry erase board and then in the morning it would all disappear. And I remember thinking, is there any way that this is all we can teach him things? I mean, that was demonstrated to me very quickly, but is there any way that we're going to make this cohese so that later on he's going to be able to put, 2 and 2 together and get 4 and realize that 4 is a multiple of many different things. He's going to be able to put it together to get to higher concepts and to be able to think things through and all the different things. He's going to be able to remember something that happened 2 weeks ago and apply that, just in a basic safety situation. Is he going to be able to remember that time when we were walking across the street and something happened and apply it to something 3 years from now? Those are all cognitive skills. And when you think about being successful in life and being able to negotiate the modern world, you have to have a certain amount of cognitive skills to be successful. And here comes the controversial part about this, is that for years people thought that you couldn't approach these from a behavioral standpoint. But guess what? It's not true. And in fact, there are people who are doing cutting-edge ABA. For instance, here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, I watch them work on these things with my son. A wide variety of different skills, from being spatially aware and being able to picture in their head where something is. So, I still see this because I have a boy child, that the other day I asked him to look for something and he went like this. He goes, "No, I don't know where it is." Right? And I said, no. You have to move things around and you need to get up and look around the room. But there is also the idea of thinking about it in your head and thinking, okay, where was I the last time? And now when I lose something, because of his cognitive skills training, my son will say to me, all right, stop for a moment and think. Where were you the last time you saw it? Let's retrace your steps. That's all cognitive skills. But also the idea that, this is not looking for something. So we're not done, but really important that you can use ABA principles to work on cognitive skills. And it's a wide variety of different things. And I would also argue that when we talk about these things, we talk about the lessons and using ABA to help a child with autism to strengthen these skills. But the truth of the matter is that we can strengthen these skills for ourselves as well, and for our children who aren't on the spectrum and our spouses who aren't on the spectrum. These are just good life lessons, being able to use your memory in a way that is productive to you. And when you can't remember things, finding other ways to be able to remember things. Like my husband, if he has to mail something, he puts it on the door, he balances it on the doorknob. These are all coping skills that we have for wherever our abilities are, all of which are contained in cognitive skills. So a really exciting set of lessons, and you can see why it is so important. Now, if you're thinking this is just for older kids and for kids who are at a higher level, I would say to you, it's absolutely true that it is helpful to those kids, but you can start working on cognitive skills with very little small children and in a way that helps for later on. So really exciting area of lessons. All right, we also always have a question of the day for you. Our question for you today is, how are you working on cognitive skills this summer? What have you decided to do with your child? And if you say, Shannon, I didn't even know I was supposed to be working on cognitive skills, I want you to know I have nothing but love for you. So glad you showed up here, because we're going to be talking about that today. If you don't have goals in place, what kind of goals you might want to set, and different ways that you can be setting that up so that it's fun, because that's got to be the key, right? Fun is the name of the game here, and not just in the summer, but especially in summer. Okay, so we'll be looking at your answers to that. And by the way, I encourage you to log in on Facebook. We will have time today to look at your answers, and you might think, oh, well, what I'm doing has nothing to do with anybody else is going to do, but it inspires other people. So if you do know what you're working on this summer cognitively, let us know. All right, we always have a topic of the day, a topic of the week. And if you haven't guessed already, this week it's about building those cognitive skills in ourselves and in our children. You don't have to be on the spectrum to want to be better at these kinds of skills. They really set us up for success. So we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about that all week with some of our experts while we answer questions that you guys have written in about. Some of the different things that we have going on today. We're going to talk a little bit about success in the classroom. We've got some ABA basics for you, and I'm going to do a road trip recap from the different things that we did on the way to and back, and all the things that we saw. I spent some time over the weekend going through, I'm somebody who has a very hard time getting rid of anything. I have not yet completely qualified for hoardership, but I'm really getting there, right? And it's time to purge and get rid of some stuff. And I was going through a box of papers because, the paperwork alone in autism could drown you, right? And can I get an amen? And anyway, so I went through a box of papers and I found a notebook. And see, this is the problem. This is why I save things, because I found this yellow legal notepad. This is the actual one. And it has notes from the very first workshop that I had to go to, parent training for ABA. Before we could start ABA services. And there were some things that I wrote that took my breath away. There is this idea that I love, and it's very, I love Oprah. If you watch the show, I'm a big Oprah fan. And Oprah always talks about the moment in The Wizard of Oz where Glinda the Good Witch says, you've had the power all along. You just didn't know you had it. And I think it's a great metaphor for all of us, that everything that we need, we have access to. It's just figuring out how to do that. And it's so funny to me that 5 years into ABA therapy, there were some things on this list that I had written down that I don't know that I actually remembered. But they were there had I gone back to the beginning. So I want to share some of those things with you and more. So we have lots of exciting things going on. And of course, we have a stress tip. And we've got some stuff happening in Los Angeles that we're going to talk about in just a minute. A report that came out in the Los Angeles Times over the weekend, in fact, yesterday in the Sunday LA Times, that we want to talk about, because some people here in California are losing services, and it's one of the things that we're going to be talking about all week long. So can't have that happen. We know that ABA is really helpful to all of our kids on the spectrum. It's not the only thing that we need to be doing for our kids, but it's definitely one of the things we need to do, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about all of that and more, and take your comments, and we have a little bit of hair controversy, hair going on that we're going to address too. So stick with us. We're going to be right back after these messages.
Say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman, Executive Director of TACA. We're gonna bake again.
All right.
It's my lovely assistant.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Lucero.
We heard so many people go, I want a decent chocolate chip cookie for my kid to eat. We've got all our dry ingredients. So I've got the flour, I've got the flaxseed meal, baking soda, baking powder, our gum, or xanthan gum.
Great.
So we're gonna get started in the mixer here. So those are dry ingredients. I did have brown sugar. We did cut this down. And the one way to do that is my favorite, and that's maple syrup. I'm using egg for this recipe, but we could use more arrowroot and also the flaxseed meal. So I'll go ahead and throw my eggs in here, which I love doing. So, and then the last thing is a shortening and gluten-free casein-free butter replacement. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in. I've let it sit out for a while so it's nice and soft. So let's go ahead and mix this thing well. These are dairy-free, soy-free, and I really like them. Again, Enjoy Life is a great product. It's also net-free. And chocolate chips are a personal thing. I won't judge you if you use the whole bag.
I would.
I know, right? So here we go. Great recipe. It's the nice consistency. Everything's ready to go, so we can enjoy our cookies here in just about 10 minutes. We want to give it a kind of like a couple inches between each cookie. Now, a lot of people are really concerned about aluminum, so what I've done is I laid down my natural brown parchment paper, and Jen's helping out putting the cookies down. So we're separating the nice baked good that's all organic from the aluminum cookie sheets. So let's go put these in. So magic oven allows me to pull the last ones out. And voila.
Yum, that's so good.
Really great cookies. I'll let you have a bite so you can do my Vanna White there too. Yeah, these taste pretty good.
Really good.
We're going to come back later after I gain 5 pounds and eat this entire tray.
For sure.
You know, more feedback is good. So if there's something you want us to convert, like another recipe or maybe a relative made, just let us know, autismlive@gmail.com. You can go to Facebook, or there's thousands of recipes on the TACA website just waiting for you to explore. You can go to TACANOW, TACANOW.org, and we'll see you next time at Autism Live.
Bye.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
And there is the lovely Lisa Ackerman making cookies. Man, gotta love that woman. She's got some good recipes. I was skeptical at first, but I've been trying them out at home, and they're amazing. So check out that full range of recipes on our YouTube page. It's under What's Left. Okay, so we wanted to talk a little bit about in the news. Yesterday in the LA Times, there was a really important article about, and the title of the article is An Autism Treatment Lost in California's Shift from Healthy Families. And we had been reporting before I left on my trip, and then a little bit last Wednesday, that a lot of stuff has shifted in the last couple of weeks, where we had asked all of you to weigh in, and I know a lot of you did, but unfortunately, I don't understand why we were not heard. And we have been asking Senator Darrell Steinberg's office and Representative Perez's office here in the state of California to give us a comment, because these are two gentlemen that have been our champions here in California. Senator Darrell Steinberg stood up on the floor of the Senate a couple of years ago and said, you know what, it looks like this autism insurance reform bill is dead, but I'm going to stand here and say the buck stops with me, and we're going to get this passed, and I'm not going to, let up until we get this passed, and single-handedly really engineered insurance reform in California happening. And you've heard me wax poetic about him before here on the show. And Senator Perez, generally in the state of California, when autism insurance or autism, any kind of legislation is being put forward, it's usually authored by one of those two gentlemen. And we have adored them. I won't say blind devotion, because I don't believe in that, but we have spoken out about how great they have been. Then, a couple of weeks ago, other stuff had happened too, that in this transition, everybody had said it's going to be difficult and there are going to be problems, but stick with us, right? And I do believe that you have to show faith in people and say, okay, I'm sticking with you. So walk with me for a minute. They had a type of insurance through the state that was called Healthy Families, and it made it possible for families who qualified to get ABA. In the insurance reform, this was done away with. Everybody squawked. They said, don't worry about it. We'll find the funding from someplace else. It's all going to work out. And then 3 weeks ago, when they put forward the budget with Governor Brown and Senator Gerald Steinberg and Representative Perez signed off on it, it isn't there. It is mysteriously missing the money that would fund this form. So this article, and you can check it out at the LA Times, they interviewed one family, the family of Evan Kim. She was 2 years old. Oh, excuse me. He was 2 years old when diagnosed with autism last year. And his parents were concerned because he had head-banging behaviors in his tantrums. My child also had that. So using a state-financed, I'm quoting from their article, healthcare program for low-income families, they found therapists who would provide a specific kind of autism treatment aimed at analyzing and improving behavior. ABA. The therapist spent 40 hours a week with Evan in his family's home, coaxing him to stop the tantrums and improving his communication skills. His mother was relieved, and there was improvement until last month when her child's health care plan changed and the therapy known as applied behavior analysis was no longer covered. The quote here says, I'm afraid he's not going to make any progress from now on, Kim said. The same service, she said, would cost $10,000 a month out of pocket. Evan's therapy was a casualty of the state's effort to phase out its Healthy Families insurance program and shift the nearly 900,000 children it covered to Medi-Cal, the broader healthcare program for the poor. Despite officials' assurances that this transition would not jeopardize services, activists say hundreds of children are losing coverage for applied behavior analysis. Our own Julie Cornack, who we're hoping to have on the show later on this week, she's been on the show before, was quoted as saying, those are the families that fall through the cracks, said Julie Cornack, a public policy analyst at the Los Angeles-based Center for Autism and Related Disorders. If they don't get the treatment they need, they won't be contributing members of society, and everyone will have to pay to take care of them. So you see this, we know, right? I'm speaking to the choir here. We know that you spend a piece of money and it saves you a lot of money down the road where our kids are concerned. So activists fear that other coverage gaps could surface as the state prepares to move to a final 150,000 children into Medi-Cal in the next 2 months. Elizabeth Abbott, an official at the advocacy group Health Access, said she worried that dental resources could also become strained. This is potentially the tip of the iceberg, Abbott said. Okay. It goes on to say a great deal about that, but then lawmakers agreed to eliminate Healthy Families last year as a savings measure pushed by Governor Jerry Brown, but the money hasn't materialized the way the administration had hoped. The state saved only 1/5 of the $13.1 million it had projected in the fiscal year that it just ended. Administration officials say that that's the result of delays, increasing healthcare costs, and other factors. Senate leader Darrell Steinberg pushed to restore coverage for applied behavior analysis for children with autism in the state budget that went into effect last Monday. However, the $50 million was not included in the budget that lawmakers sent to Brown last month. I don't know why. I don't know why, and I'd like an answer, and I'm sure that these families would like an answer. So we'll keep reporting about this. We're hoping to get Julie Cornack in the studio, and we continue to ask Senator Perez and Senator Steinberg's offices for a plan. Could we please be cued into what's happening, because we don't know. I believe in having faith in people, and these people have demonstrated themselves as people who care about us, but then where's the communication? Let us know where we stand. Did we just get sold up the river, or you got a bigger plan? The people that I've talked to who have great faith in these gentlemen have said, no, I'm sure there's a bigger plan. I just want to know what it is. I hope you're with me on this. So we'll keep you up to date on anything that happens with this, and we'll continue to move forward, because the one thing that we know is no matter matter what happens, we have to find coverage for these kids. When people talk about No Child Left Behind, I don't know what they're talking about, but you and I know what we're talking about, no child left behind. And when you don't allow some children to have these therapies because their families can't afford them, when no one can afford it, let's be honest, but some people have even bigger hardships than others, you leave those children behind. And that is a cost to that child, that is a cost to that family, and really it's a cost to all society. A huge cost. And I'm not just talking monetarily, but there is the monetary there. So we continue on. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about stress. So stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back. For the month of July, I figured we're going to do something again that's more for outdoorsiness since it's summertime and I know your kids are going to be home and you need some activities to do inside and outside. So for July, I figured we'd make a lantern. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are wax paper, an iron, crayons, scissors, popsicle sticks, pencil sharpener, a glue gun, and tape. What I did first is that I have my iron heating on medium heat, okay? Make sure you keep this far away from your child because I won't want them to get hurt. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to take my wax paper and I'm going to make 4 sheets. I'm going to cut out a thing that's about 12 inches long, okay? Now that I have my wax papers cut out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my crayon, and if you have kids around, which I hope you do, I'm going to grab them and have them make some crayon shavings. What the shavings are going to end up doing is making it a design. And again, this is another time for you and your child to talk about colors. You can discuss like what would happen if you mix, some blue crayons and some yellow crayons. What would that produce? When you and your child have finally decided there's enough crayon shavings on your wax paper, what you're going to do next is you're going to take it and fold it in half. Now that I have it folded in half, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an old newspaper and then I'm going to sandwich it in between. And then with my iron on medium heat, I'm just going to have it gently on there just so the wax melts into the paper and becomes one thing. Let's take a peek inside. As you can see, all the crayons have melted into it, making this beautiful kind of like rainbow-ish color. Alright, now I'm going to do this with the other 3 that I've made, and then we're going to assemble our beautiful lantern. Alright? So here are my 4 finished panels that I'm ready to build into the lantern. So what I'm going to do is I have these popsicle sticks, and I'm going to build them into a square and glue them together with my hot glue gun. While you're building your lantern, it's a good opportunity to work on math skills with your child. You could discuss how many sides does a square have versus how many sides does a cube have. Okay, I'm going to do this another 3 more times, so I have one for every single side. Alright, well, now that I have these 4 different sides built, I am now going to take these wax paper things that I've built, and then I'm going to put glue on here and smash it on there, okay? I know the wax paper is way too big for it, but what we're going to do later is trim it. Alright, so now they're all done being glued together. Now I'm going to take my scissors and trim along the outside. Now that the 4 sides are done, I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to line the edge of it so they will stay together to make my cube form. And voila, here's my lantern, but it's missing something. You're right, it's missing a light to illuminate it. So what I'm going to put in here is an LED light. I'm definitely not going to put a real candle or else this thing's going to catch on fire, and that is a real safety hazard, okay? So here's my little guy, and I'm going to turn it on and let's see what happens. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that pretty nice? And it's not even dark yet. I would love if you shared your pictures of your finished crafts. But until then, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
I can't wait to do that craft. That looks really exciting. It kind of keys right into what we're talking about today. Stress. It's Monday, so we talk about stress on Mondays and try to give us a tip for us all to take to heart and go, okay, this is a reality. Stress is a part of our lives, and we need to be in a certain amount of acceptance about that. We don't have to be in contentment about it, but we have to be in a certain amount of acceptance about it. And we need to not poo-poo it and say, oh, well, I just need to calm down, right? Because how well does that work for anybody? But we need to manage it, managing our stress. We're never going to get rid of it entirely, but we have to have coping mechanisms to get through it. So it's summer, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about is finding the happy balance between doing activities so that we're not doing nothing and just being complete vegetables during summer, but also finding time to just be a vegetable in the summer, because it's really important. I got into a conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about how we utilize our downtime, and do we utilize it to the best of our ability, and some of the different things that we all do, and how different that is than what we used to do in days gone past. And I think it was a really eye-opening conversation for both of us in the conversation, because we were talking about we both felt guilty about certain things that we were doing with our time. And one of the things that came up was television, that, we were saying, well, if I just stopped watching television altogether, then what could I accomplish in my life? But it was very interesting that I felt that way about myself. But when I was listening to this other friend of mine talking, and she said, well, if I just, stopped watching ridiculous television, and she was watching a lot of home and garden channel, a lot of DIY stuff like this. And she was saying, and I don't ever actually do any of it, but I find myself watching it a lot. And I, of course, defended that and said, but you know what? That's a really good use of your downtime, because you're probably, a lot of things going on in your life, so you're probably too tired to do the actual craft thing. But if it de-stresses you to watch it and you don't have to clean up the mess, I don't see a problem with that. I think that that's a good use of your time, as long as it's not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But, something that ratchets down the level of stress, not increases the level of stress. I was saying, that my garden is the thing for me, but sometimes it creates more stress, right? That it might be more beneficial for me to watch a gardening show sometimes rather than take on a new gardening project. Deal with the projects that I have and enjoy those, but not take on, a huge expansion. We have a plot, Gem and I, at our community garden, and we were recently offered, they're expanding a new part of the community garden, and we could get twice the size, but we would have to start from scratch. And I made the mature choice to say, as much as I, think, oh, wouldn't I love to have that much more space, maybe next year, that this year for the stress, I want to manage the stress, and gardening can reduce that stress, but taking on a new gardening project is going to put it through the roof. So really looking at what you're doing and saying, okay, what do I do to reduce stress? And does it actually reduce stress? Is there something I would rather be doing? Be mindful of it. Make mindful choices and ask yourself, okay, how do I really want to spend this time? And after I do this activity, is it something that my stress is reduced, or am I more anxious than I was before? My family loves to play games, and they love to play computer games or video games. Even my mother loved, it's just something in our family, and my husband's family too, that this is the thing we do. But there are some video games that stress me out more. And I now say, I'm not doing that. That will stress me out. So being mindful, is this something that actually reduces stress? Is this how I want to spend my time? How do I feel afterwards? That's the real litmus test. But make sure that you do allow yourself some guilty pleasures. Reading a really good book. Oh my goodness, what a lovely thing to do in the summer. And passing that on to our children, whether it's them, reading something that's mostly pictures or pretending to read, it really helps if we model behavior. So whatever it is, whether it's reading a good book or doing something else, model what it looks like to reduce stress for our kids. And then hopefully we have a lovely, productive summer and aren't, running around with our hair catching on fire, feeling like we have to do every activity. So I look at that lovely craft that Suzanne did, and I hope that I get to it by the end of the summer, but if I don't, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. And we have talked in previous shows about planning. Make sure you do something this summer that is beneficial to everybody. Okay, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to address some of the questions that you guys wrote in over the break, just a couple of them, so stick with us.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides programs to educate students, parents, and professionals proven techniques using applied behavior analysis. Access online video lessons with IBT eLearning. Get one-on-one personalized instruction with IBT face-to-face training. Acquire professional guidance with IBT BCBA supervision. Develop professional growth with IBT continuing education courses. Get access to IBT services today. IBT 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We love it when you guys write in questions, and you guys wrote in overwhelmingly while we were away. And I want to deal with this first question. I'm going to put it up on the screen for you guys so that you can see what to do if you feel your child was misdiagnosed. I'm going to show that for you right now on the screen. And this is a question that comes in a lot, and we'll be asking our experts about this as well this week. But I would like to address it from a parent point of view, and I can't tell you how often we hear this from parents. It's very common. And I say that not to poo-poo it and say, oh, you know, it's not an important question. It's a very important question. But I let you know that a lot of people ask it so that you don't feel like you're alone, or that there's something askew with the fact that you're asking this question. And by the way, it's on both sides of the equation. People who have gotten an autism diagnosis who feel that maybe that's incorrect, and there are people who didn't get the autism diagnosis who feel that that's correct. So I'm going to deal with both of those questions kind of separately. Let's start with the person who feels that there's something going on with their child, and they go and take their child to get them diagnosed, and they don't get the autism diagnosis. Now, you've heard experts on this show talk about that. The actual diagnosis means very little, really, in the long run, because it's a very fluid thing. And I know that this is not something that's widely covered, but the fact of the matter is that, you know, when you look at the criteria, whether it was the criteria from the beginning of May of this year or the criteria that exists now, no matter which one you're looking at, it's a continuum, right? And it says, you know, a whole lot of people can fit in it and a whole lot of people don't fit in it, right? And the criteria changes. So what does that tell you? That it's a very fluid thing. But really, why is that important to us? It's only important to us to get a diagnosis if we're looking for funding for treatment. And that's hugely important, right? So, for instance, your insurance is not going to cover autism treatment unless your child has an autism diagnosis. So that's why it becomes important if you feel like your child is behind and there are goals, developmental goals that they're not meeting, and you want help and support. That's a good reason to go out and attempt to get a diagnosis so that you can get access to funding. If you are independently wealthy and have no need of any financial support, then really you don't ever need to go get a diagnosis, because it isn't essential. But I don't know anyone. I've never heard of anybody that was not that was the case. So let's assume that you'd like some financial support in getting your child some help and support. Then you're going to need a diagnosis. And my first question would be, you know, the person that you went to, is it someone, A, that you got good references about, and B, is it someone who is tied to the purse strings? Do you know what I mean by that? If you are going to the school and the school is going to help you to get your child evaluated, and then the school is going to offer your child services based on what they evaluated in your child, you have to ask yourself the question, how much do I trust these individual people to do the right thing? In a lot of cases, people do the right thing because they see that a child needs help, and that's why they are in the field that they're in. But that is not always the case. We have heard countless stories of organizations and individuals who had a responsibility to someone else, and their diagnosis and came in different than what someone who was an impartial third party would have said. And it could be that they say, oh yes, we're getting diagnosis of autism, but we're recommending that the child gets 10 hours of therapy a week. And the child is 3 years old and greatly affected. And we would know, okay, that's more of a financial decision than an actual, and we've actually heard medical people say, well, I'm only recommending what I know they'll fund. Well, the technical term for that is a steaming pile of poo. Make sure that when you go and get your diagnosis, that whoever it is that you're talking to is going to give your child a diagnosis based on your child, not on the funding, and that the recommendation for services be based on your child, not on what is possible to be funded. Be clear with them that that's what your expectation is. Now, if you've already gone through this process and you didn't know about that, and you were between a rock and a hard place, and somebody said, hey, we'll fund in part or in total your child getting a diagnosis, and then it came back and you feel like it was a misdiagnosis, now you need to go back to square one, figure out if you can get a second opinion, if you can afford it, if somebody will fund that for you. There are different places that will fund that for you. You can apply for grants. We've talked before about people like Act Today. We've talked about sometimes your insurance will cover getting a second opinion. Check that out before you agree to pay, because sometimes people charge upwards of $3,000. I have heard of people paying $5,000 to get a diagnosis. By the way, you don't have to pay that. That is not essential, but I'm telling you that in some places in the world, I have heard of people paying that much to get a diagnosis, an impartial third-party diagnosis. I would also recommend to you that one of the first places that you might want to start is to go to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders homepage. It's centerforautism.com. And then go under the Services tab and look for Assessment. See if you live anywhere close enough to get an assessment from CARD. They do a very thorough assessment, and they are in many places around the world. They're by no means everywhere. But if you're close enough to one, I know you'll get an impartial diagnosis that has to do with your child's needs, and it's much more affordable than a lot of places that you could go. And they will help you to determine whether your insurance will cover it. They will be upfront with you about that. But there are many other places. CARD is not, by any stretch of the imagination, the only place to get a diagnosis, but there is the possibility, there is an assessment portion of CARD, so that is a possibility. But if you feel that your child was misdiagnosed and not given an autism diagnosis, and you feel in your gut that your child has autism and needs the help and support that would come with an autism diagnosis, then I have to tell you, you have to follow your gut. That if I could take every parent who has been in this studio and said, my regret is I didn't do X, Y, or Z earlier because the doctor said this, the pediatrician said this, the school official said this, and I listened to them because I wanted to believe what they were telling me was the truth, and I wanted to not have to spend that extra money, and now it is the biggest regret in my life. If I could take all of those people and bring them into this room and ask them what would they say to you, they would all look right at this camera and say to you, follow your gut. Don't listen to anybody until your gut has been satisfied. I don't know a single person who has a child on the autism spectrum that doesn't have some sort of regret about something they didn't do sooner. So I don't want you to be the next in line to be that. Follow your gut. Figure it out. Apply to the United Healthcare Children's Fund. Get a grant to go get the diagnosis. Beg from family members. Do what you have to do. It's the first important step along the way, and it will make the difference in a lot of states about how much treatment your child gets. If you have more specific questions about what it can mean for you in your individual state, because it's not a level playing field, and I wish our politicians would get that under control, but it isn't a level playing field, and in some states it's much different than other states, but it all starts with that important diagnosis. And if you didn't get it, go back and get a really reputable person to do the diagnosis. Now, if you're on the other side of the equation, bless you, bless you, bless you. If you have gotten a diagnosis of autism and you really don't think that that's what your child has, I'm going to say to you very lovingly, you know what? It's going to be okay. Because if you really feel that your child does not have autism and they got the diagnosis, you are in the best of all possible situations that you are going to have access to more funding and more services to get your child help. If you went in and got your child looked at to begin begin with, and that tells me that something's up. And it may not be as severe as autism, or it might be a very mild form of autism, but once you have that diagnosis, you have, in most places, you have access to information and services that can make a big difference to your child. It doesn't matter on the label, and you don't have to tell anyone that your child got the diagnosis of autism. And we know that in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, children will get to the point, if they get the right kinds of services, where they no longer qualify for it. I can't tell you how many people I have met who got their child diagnosed at 3 and 4, got the services, and by the time their child was 7, they show no signs of having autism. They're not in a school that knows that they ever had an autism diagnosis. Their life is completely normal and happy and wonderful. And there is no, emotional scarring because somebody in a room said they had autism and got them help and support. That is, don't get hung up on the A word. Get hung up on the fact that your child is going to get help. And I know sometimes it's hard, especially, one partner or the other. There's some denial, right, about the term, and that's okay. But be in denial about that, but don't be in denial about getting the help and support. All they're saying is your child needs help. Get the help. Don't argue the word. It'll be okay. It really will. All right. So hopefully you've got some directions to go in. But honestly, the message of the day is if you think your child is misdiagnosed, make sure that you do everything you can to get your child access to the therapies that are going to be helpful. And we're talking about ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. It's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for all of our kids on the spectrum. There are lots of things that we talk about here on the show. There's biomedical interventions that you can do. They're all, we talked about horse boy. There are all kinds of different therapies that you can do with children. And depending upon the child, there are things that have been greatly successful. But then for other children, it's not the thing that's right for that child. It's very individualized. But with ABA, we know that it's effective at creating progress with all of our kids, whether they're older or younger, whether they're very high functioning or greatly affected by autism. We know that ABA is effective for all of them. It's the reason why insurance companies are now, in a lot of states, paying for it. But it is part of our job as parents to make sure that our kids have access to that, and that starts with a diagnosis. So job one, getting that diagnosis on paper. If you need more help or advice or figuring out how you're going to pay for that or who you're going to go to, write into us, call into us, but also check with your local support groups about who gets it done in your area of the world. Other parents will know. Okay, we are going to take a break. We're going to come back, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what is on this yellow notepad from, my goodness, 8 years ago, and why it kind of gave me shivers. So stick with us.
The Center for Autism and Related Disorders is celebrating the grand opening of the CARD Assessment Center in Woodland Hills. The CARD Assessment Center provides consultation and assessment for individuals of all ages with a variety of disorders, including autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder, memory disorder, learning disability, and intellectual giftedness. To schedule an appointment, contact the CARD Assessment Center today.
Welcome back. And I just was reading a text because my child has strep. But he went off to the doctor this morning, and he asked to go to the doctor last night, and I was like, oh, okay. So he went off to the doctor this morning, and I got to speak to the doctor on a conference call right before the show started. And I love my pediatrician, and we shopped around for a long time before we found this pediatrician. And one of the things I love about my pediatrician is that he asks me questions and says, Shannon, what do you know about this? And da-da-da-da. And anytime I have information for him, he takes it and he actually reads it. It's a fabulous thing. But we've never had a conversation about pandas before. And so this morning I was sending my husband off to go to the doctor's because that's just what time the appointment was. And I said, but get me on the phone for the conference call. And I said, but if for some reason it doesn't work out, you have to ask him if he knows about pandas and that he'll need to be looked at for that because there's been a high level of anxiety with this sore throat. just has my little antennas going up. And so anyway, so here I had the doctor on the conference call, and I said, okay, so do you know about PANDAS? He said, yes, absolutely. In fact, when your husband said sore throat and anxiety, he's getting looked at, but it has come back positive for strep. Okay, I have to be a mom first and foremost, right? I'm here with you, but my GEM 101 program is running in the back of my head. Speaking of which, right when GEM was diagnosed and we were able to get it, there was a process, right? But we got on the waiting list, and we had to take a parent training class. Here in the state of California, the regional center back then would pay for ABA for you because there was no insurance. But my insurance wouldn't have covered it anyway. So there you have it. You had to take, both parents had to take a 16-hour parent training class before you could get on the waiting list with a provider. And your parent training could not be given by the same organization that you were hoping to get ABA therapy from. That's still the case, and I don't really know what the thought process is behind that, but whatever. So it was very interesting, though, taking the parent training, and I found, when I was going through papers the other day, I found this legal pad of the first parent training that my husband and I went to, and my notes. And I was looking through, and of course, I'm not the best note taker, and so there are some things on here that I have no idea what they mean. But it really took me back in time. And I was kind of amazed by, there was one phrase on here that it makes me cry, because it certainly was my experience of autism and fighting for services for my son, but there was a phrase that I hadn't really thought of in this way. But okay, so let me go through some of the different things. I've talked about before on the show that at the period of time when my son was being diagnosed, we had started a membership at the YMCA. We actually started on the 1st of January. We signed up, my husband and I were like, we're going to get in shape, and he's going to get kids to play with, and everything's going to be better. And we knew that we had our appointment on January 16th to go to the developmental pediatrician, but our hope was that it was just a speech delay or something, right? So on the 1st, we started the membership. On the 16th, he was diagnosed with autism. And it didn't work out really well with the YMCA. And eventually we were asked, well, we weren't asked to leave, but we were told that our son wasn't welcome. And it's a very still devastating thing to me. And I know that our YMCA has been much better since our child left, because I raised a little bit of a stink, not enough of a stink, but they've been much better with kids on the spectrum. But still, honestly, they need to send me a letter saying my child is welcome again. And until they do that, my feelings are still hurt. There I've said it. In any case, the top of my notes, it says, don't leave the YMCA, stay. Get a behaviorist to go with, which I did do. I took a behaviorist to the YMCA, and that didn't work out either. But that was the advice of the person who was the very beneficial person who was leading this parent training. This particular person did believe in timeouts after a warning as a last resort. And of course, timeout and the warning of a timeout didn't work out for us, because it doesn't work out for most people. It is a punishment strategy, and it isn't effective for most of our kids. We know that. But there are a lot of notes in here about timeout. But underlined here, immediate reinforcement. Probably the first time I ever wrote that in my entire life. And picking different things to work on with him. And one of the big things, because he was about to turn 3, that they had talked about was working on body parts with him. And there's the thing here that says pick 3 or 4 activities, give immediate reinforcement, and do these every 30 minutes. And the list of things is to work on a couple of words, to pick up toys, to do body parts, and it suggests writing, which I didn't get because he was 2.5. I didn't understand why that. And that to get a 30-minute timer for myself, which we did do, and set it, and every 30 minutes go through these things and give a reinforcement. And I was supposed to start with just eyes and ears, and to make him show, so that I would say, where are your eyes? And he would have to show me. Okay. And then I was supposed to wait 1 week before I moved on to the next thing. Very rough sorts of things, but it was a beginning, right? and to have him working on the beginnings of words. Okay, then we were supposed to list different things that were a problem. And the first thing that I wrote was not enough downtime. Downtime for parents, and that at that point in time we still hadn't started ABA services, but there was an early intervention that they gave to families, and we would go to a center. My son would have OT, he would have speech, and then he would have this little group that he would go through twice a week, and then he had a little bit of therapy that I would describe as floor time-esque, and the therapist would come to the house to do floor time with him. But unfortunately, and this was one of the things on the list, that my child was sleepy during all of the therapy time. They would come in the afternoon, and it was his nap time, and we couldn't get him to stay awake, and he wouldn't do anything. And my third thing was daily demands, that I needed to work, and that housework, and that where did work and housework go while I was going to all these appointments and having therapists in the home, because I literally was like, when do I get to sleep? How am I going to make any money? And how is my laundry going to get done? And how are the dishes going to be done? And the recommendation here was to call our regional center provider and to ask for respite. And I wrote a list of what can we remove, what relief can we get in, and the main thing was that we needed to have those therapy hours be productive, and I wrote so that Jem is not so tired. And we wrote some goals. At the end of April, we wanted to get his speech doubled, and that we wanted him to be able to sleep in his own bed, and there were sleep issues. And I said, I wrote here that we wanted to master the basics, overcome obstacles, and set goals. And then here, this was amazing to me, that 20 times a day, I have written in the margin here, that I need to practice being loving when calm. I can remember my stress level was so high, and I wanted to be loving with my child, but this whole idea that I had to write down, practice being loving when calm. I think that's great even for now. To give visual representations for things. I wrote here, because it was what he said, it didn't end up being something that was effective for us. Food reinforcement, to give food as reinforcement. It didn't work out for us. And remind him when he hugs to do it properly, and that if he continues, timeout is the last resort. My child still he has to ask now. He'll ask people if it's okay to hug, and he has to do it very gently, because what he used to do was he would glom onto you and pick his feet up and just about break your back. I have no idea what that means. But here we get into some of the questions, and I wrote down the IEP process, that there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, which was news to me, because the only other time I'd been in an IEP was as a teacher on the other side of the table and had no idea that there was bureaucracy and red tape. My notes say that it's illegal to violate an IEP. That's true. It's illegal to withhold any services because of money. That's true. And nice but determined is what gets it done. I absolutely believe in that. And then I wrote this question, what do we want for Jem? Because I remember the gentleman saying to us that one of the most important things you need to know is, what do you want? Before you go in and start asking for things, know what you absolutely need. And I wrote, schedule the IEP now, also good advice. But somewhere on here, okay. That I wrote down because they wanted us to make a list of goals and objectives. That they said that the school will probably ask you for goals and objectives and have your own list. But the big important thing that I wrote down that I think is important for all of us to remember is that services are driven by goals and objectives. And that is the truth. When we want something from a school, when we want something from our insurance company, when we want something from anyone, from our ABA provider, the more we are clear on what we want to accomplish and what goals and objectives we have, that is when you're more likely to get those services for that. And if you think about this in a very pragmatic way, if you're an entity, let's say that you were going to start a charity, that you were going to give money to people, and you had $100,000 to give, and you said to people, submit and tell us what you would like from the $100,000. The person who writes in and says to you, I need, $10.25 to buy this, and I need $12.35 to buy this, and together I'm going to be able to do this with that, is the person who's going to get more of your attention than somebody saying, I need $10,000 to start a business. Right? The more specific we are, the more likely that our needs are going to be met. And I certainly, all these years later, can attest to the fact that that's true. Services are driven by goals and objectives. So I'm asking you guys today, where are you on this? I forgot this along the way. Quite honestly. I still did it to some extent, but I forgot that that's why. I certainly am reminded of it now, and when I saw that, I went, man, that is the most powerful thing. I wished I'd put that somewhere where I could see it on a daily basis, that services are driven by goals and objectives. And so I put that out to you guys today and ask you, are you clear on what you want to achieve? Do you have it written down somewhere? Do you share that with people on your team that are working with you? Because if you don't, what would happen? Here's the big question. What would happen if you did? How excited would they be knowing exactly what you want? And how much more effective would you be at getting it done? I think you'll find that a lot of your obstacles move to the side the more specific you are. That's certainly been the case for me, and I know for a lot of other people. So that's why I wanted to bring that in, because there it was, the key to pretty much everything on the first day, only I didn't know it was the key to everything. Okay, we are going to take a break, and we're going to go take a look at this week's episode of The A Word. This is an amazing ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who at this point in the video is 3 years old. He's about a year into therapy, and he's made a great deal of progress. So let's take a look at what's going on this week with Jack Riley. This is The A Word.
Nick was diagnosed with autism in 1994 at the age of 4. He received 5 years of therapy from CARD that eventually faded out. Nick recovered from autism in 2001.
The song I'm about to perform is by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. CARD helped many patients, myself, to recover to this level now.
Cheryl and Mike's son, Jack Riley, was diagnosed with autism in 2010 at age 2. He's been receiving therapy from CARD for a year and a half. Today, Cheryl, Mike, and Nick meet for the first time.
I'm curious as to what you remember.
I certainly remember pretty long sessions, and I'd be frustrated if I would make mistakes. I remember one time I had to count a row of 6 blocks, kept messing up. That was really difficult.
I need it.
No.
I need it. I need it.
At what point do you recall hearing the word autism?
I was able to figure out what I was going through without anybody having to tell me.
Our concern is if it's a big secret to hide. I don't know what we can say.
No one ever told you, you just discerned.
But the reason I'm comfortable talking about this is because I felt it. In therapy, I certainly began questioning why people reacted as they did based on what I said and did. Particularly because of difficulties I was facing in school. It got to a point where I wanted to understand why it was. So I entered while still going through therapy and still showing significant signs of the mental condition. Even after I'd improved to a significant extent, there were those who still gave me a hard time for it.
Did it hurt your feelings when you were in school, the way that kids...
Oh, absolutely, because it was bullying, it was harassment.
That scares us.
They called me names. I was basically, when it came to sports and PE, I was usually the last kid chosen.
Did teachers intervene?
Fortunately, not really. It was just so hard for me to talk about it because of how ashamed I felt. Certainly the first few years of elementary school, I don't think I really had the most supportive teachers. I remember my mom told me how my first grade teacher once said that she thought I had no chance of getting anywhere. And going away to college and out of state and being the only person from my old school district has made a difference. It's just really improved my social life tremendously because I got to be me, because with nobody knowing about my past, I wasn't faced with these misconceptions and prejudgments.
Do you tell people, new people that you meet?
No, that's not the first thing I will ever
No, I would
tell.
hope it's not the
and
first thing.
You know what? In most cases, I never do, because while it's a part of my past, it doesn't define who I am. I mean, just thinking back to the very beginning, pretty much each episode, autism, what, not who.
I want to tell you right now, though, I'm so impressed with you.
Likewise.
I want you to know that.
Likewise. I mean, your son really inspires me just as much, because I'll tell you, anytime
I adore him, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't challenging.
I mean,
it's cost me my the stuff that like career things, goals. I don't care about those anymore. I work at night. I'm tending bar. Not that I'm too good for that. I'm just saying that's what I do. I want him to have a chance.
Right.
And you inspire me now.
Thank you. The feeling goes both ways. The feeling's mutual.
Before you leave today, we would like you to meet Jack.
I would love to.
This is Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, Jack Riley.
All right, should we try this? I'm gonna try to take a picture of all of you. 1, 2, and 3.
Jack Riley, you rock.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So that was the A Word, and a very special episode of the A Word, because the young man who they were talking to, Nick Yates, you've seen him before on the show on several different occasions, and I would encourage you to look at our YouTube page and see some of the different interviews that we've done with Nick over time. Nick just graduated from college and is currently touring Europe. I know I saw pictures of him over the weekend in Paris. Rough life. And this is not Nick's first time going off to Europe. And by the way, he's off tootling around Europe on his own. And he's an amazing young man. An amazing young man, and very inspirational. And you saw that the dad of the A Word got a little emotional. And I've had an opportunity also to talk to the A Word dad about getting to meet Nick and what it meant. And I think we can all relate to this, that, you have these fears once you hear the A Word the first time about what is this going to mean for my child? What's the best that I can hope for? What's the worst case scenario, right? And then you make a decision about where you're going to hang out on that timeline. I can remember when Jem was barely diagnosed and going to get a car seat. And Jem was very tall, still is very tall for his age, and we'd gotten a Britex car seat, a 5-point, beautiful, fabulous, like the Cadillac of car seats, not cheap. And we got the car seat, and I was taking the other one out of the car, and I needed to install it, and I wanted the worker to help me to do it, because I wanted it to be done right, and the first time with the car seat, and it's a little bit different with the Britex, and you kind of do need somebody to show you how to do it. Anyway, the difficulty was that I needed for her to show me. We were in a parking lot in an alley, and so I took the old car seat out and put my son in the 5-point harness in the car seat sitting right next to the car, so that he wasn't running around like a crazy person. Otherwise, I was never going to see how to put the car seat in. And it was tough. It was just like a tough moment. We just barely gotten the diagnosis. And the girl was like, "Why are you locking him into the old car seat?" And I said, "Because otherwise he'll be all over the parking lot. I won't be able to concentrate on this." And, I was there with the door open, like my foot was on the car seat, so nothing was going to happen, but he was contained. You guys know what I'm talking about, because he wouldn't have been. And she said, "Well, can't you just set him in the front seat and have him sit there while we do this?" And I said, "No, he won't do that. He'll climb on my head." And she was asking all these questions, and finally I sort of sighed and I said, he was just diagnosed with autism and we're having a lot of behavior problems. And she said, "Oh, gosh, don't worry about that. He'll be fine." She said, "Oh, I babysit for a kid who's 15 years old and has autism, and he's fine. He's doing so great." And you hear that a lot. You hear, somebody says, "Oh, so-and-so is doing so great." And you go, what does that mean? What does that mean? I want to know what's like my best case scenario. And she said, "Oh, he's great." And I said, "Does he communicate?" "No, excuse me, he doesn't talk. I said, does he sign? No. And people weren't really using, there was assisted technology, but they weren't using iPads back then. I said, does he use something to be able to, no, he doesn't communicate at all. And I said, oh, because, this is the idea of doing great. It was very concerning to me. And she said, yeah, and he's still in diapers, but he's the sweetest kid on the face of the planet. Now, I have no doubt that she was telling the God's honest truth, that he probably was the sweetest kid on the planet. But that wasn't what I was hoping for the best case scenario. The fact that she said, oh, he's doing so well, and to her doing well meant that he had no communication skills and he had no adaptive skills whatsoever. It took the wind out of my sails. And I thought, oh, okay, if that's the most we can hope for. And I really was at an early stage that I didn't know. And then immediately went home and got online and ran to people and said, is that the most I can hope for? No, good heavens, no. And in fact, I now know that this poor young man, that I wish I could find him, who would be in his 20s now, I'm hoping that family has gotten help and support, and the message now that any of our kids can be potty trained. Any of our kids, and I'm talking about with dual diagnosis, twice exceptional, they know how to potty train our kids. They do. So that he did not have to be in a diaper anymore, that we can get that help and support. Unless there is a physical paralysis, where they literally can't feel the sensation, we can get our kids potty trained. And that we can get functional communication of some sort to varying different degrees with all of our kids as well. And when I think about that poor young man and this idea that, she thought that was the best that could be hoped for, and I hope that everyone within the sound of my voice understands that that's a young man that really needed some help and support and whose life could be altered for the better, and his families as well. But in any case, I say all this because, I know that as parents, we're all looking for that what's the best case scenario. And when you get to meet young people who are on the spectrum, and if you haven't, I encourage you to go to an event and get to meet some of these young people, because it's life-changing. Now, Nick recovered. And so he is not considered anywhere on the spectrum. But I've met other individuals who are still considered on the spectrum. I would offer up Danny Bowman, who is just the most beautiful, amazing, talented young woman who is on the spectrum, who I think she probably just turned 18, if not she's 17, but is getting ready to go off to college on a great scholarship, already owns her own film company, travels around the world doing lectures and teaching other kids on the spectrum how to do animation, has multiple books out that she has illustrated, and Danny has an amazing, rich, full life. Danny has been given support over the years and been given a lot of her family has given her support, that when she was interested in something, they made sure she had the materials to be able to pursue art and animation. But I encourage you to find the opportunity to meet and sit and talk with some of these kids, to hear their dreams. Because I'll tell you what, you hear their dreams and it fills you up. It is respite, right? It is rejuvenating the batteries to remind you that this moment in time, wherever you are with your child, is not the whole truth, right? That there's more to come. Some of it's heart-wrenching, some of it is not easy, but there are amazing things coming down the path, and there is growth and there is progress available for all of our kids. So that's what I see when I see the A-word dad sitting there and looking at Nick and realizing, okay, maybe my kid is going to go around Europe. Maybe my kid is going to go off to college by himself and excel and be an RA, a residence assistant in a dorm. And Nick is getting ready to do is it Teach for America? I think it's Teach for America, where he's going to be going into classroom and donating his time. I just think he's a remarkable young man, and if you're looking for, okay, what's a great outcome, Nick is definitely one to look at. And we've done multiple interviews with him. But he's not the only one. Lots and lots and lots of kids, young people, young adults on the spectrum who are truly an inspiration. Alex Plank, who we hope is going to be able to join us again as a regular on the show. Another great example of what it can be on the spectrum, and I would encourage you to go to his website as well, wrongplanet.net, to check out tons of older teenagers and adults who are on the spectrum who are leading full, rich lives. It gives us all hope and reminds us, okay, this is not a tragedy. This is a path. There is a trajectory to it, and our kids are amazing, absolutely amazing, and they grow up to be amazing people. All very, very hopeful. Okay, we are going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back and talk about some possible cognition goals that you might have for the summer, because you guys wrote in and said either that your ABA provider is taking care of the cognition goals, or that you don't have an ABA provider and you're wanting to know what those are. So we're going to talk about some of the different things that you can work on for cognition. Stick with us. We'll be back after these messages.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about cognition skills and cognition goals. This is one of the things that we're going to be talking about all week long, because cognition is how we use our brain to think about things in a way that helps us to be productive. And I mentioned earlier that it sounds like something, oh, well, that's just for the older kids, that's just for the higher functioning kids. But, you know, while it is great for the older kids and it's great for the high functioning kids, we would be remiss if we left out the younger kids, because it's really going to help us with functional communication. It's really going to help us with a whole lot of things. So I want to go through some of the different things, some of the different categories that we look at when we're dealing with cognition. Desires. What do people want? What do people like? And we start by working on this with children on what they like. So stop and think about that when we start out with ABA and we're doing a preference assessment, because rule number one with ABA is that in order for us to do a behavior over and over and over again, there's got to be some sort of paycheck. So we create a paycheck for things that we want our kids to do. That immediate reinforcement that I was talking about before. So if I want the child to go la, right? Then I have to build something in to make it worthwhile for the child to say la. Maybe it's that when they say la, I blow a bubble. So I say la, they go la, and I blow a bubble, yay, and we pop the bubble. Now I say la, and they do the, right? But I have to know what's an actual paycheck for the child. And if I don't know what the paycheck for the child is, I'm not going to be successful. You know, somebody could say to me, Shannon, we need you to jump off of a building with a parachute. And we're going to pay you $1,000 to do that. Well, you know what? $1,000 isn't going to get me to do that. It just isn't, because I'm too afraid of heights. And you could offer to me, and I might even go, okay, I could use $1,000. I'd get to the top of the building, and then I'd go, you know what? It's not worth it to me. I'm not doing it. But there are things that you could offer me that I would jump off the building, right? I can't think of any right now, but I'm sure there's something I would jump off a building for. But it'd have to be big, right? And it's the same thing with our kids, because in effect, a lot of things that we're asking them to do are difficult for them. We're asking them to jump off a building, and we have to make sure that the paycheck suits the task that we're asking them to do. So we need to know what they want. And there are lots of different lessons that we can do, but we start with something called a preference assessment, where maybe we set 3 things in front of the child, and we set these 3 things, and a baby, you can do that with a baby and picture these as being stuffed animals, and we see which one does the baby gravitate toward. Oh, they want the one that is interactive. Well, you know what? That's a good thing. And if our kids want to play with our phones as a reinforcement, that's all good. But you know, we want to make sure that we're languaging. We say, oh, you want the phone. Oh, you like the phone. So we're using those kinds of terms. Then, you know, we can get to the point where we can actually start saying, which one do you want later on? But with a baby, you just see which one they pick up, and then we language it, right? So which one do you want? Then later on, a little bit further, we start to say, well, which one do you think Daddy would like? Then we start to get into perspective taking. Well, what have you seen Daddy like before in the past? What do you think he might like, right? So we want to know, we want to be able to understand our own desires and then other people's desires. And there are ways that we can teach these things to our children that are going to be really beneficial to us. Next step along the way, and you don't have to wait until you get desires before you can work on this. You can be working on them at the same time. We start to talk about emotions. Boy, it was such an amazing time when they began to teach emotions to my son, understanding his own emotions and understanding other people's emotions, because he, you know, and I think it's true of all kids, they're having an emotion, they don't know what it is, they have no way of languaging it, and you're really in the present when you're having an emotion, right? Especially if it's a strong one, and you're having those feelings, and it doesn't feel like they're ever going to end. And we would constantly be languaging emotions for my child and saying, so if he was crying, I would say, you're feeling sad. You're really feeling sad right now, or you know, you're feeling frustrated. And I don't remember if it was my mother or my husband. Somebody was like, really, you're going to say these things to me? You're like, what is the use of this? But, I really saw it much further down the road that by the time my son was 8, there were times when he would turn and something would be bothering him, and where before, when he was 4, he would just start hitting and kicking and doing and swiping things off of tables. I remember when he was 8 and saying to him, what's going on? And him saying, I really don't want to talk about it right now because I'm feeling very frustrated. And I just need to be by myself for a few minutes, and thinking, my goodness, I know adults I can't language that when I'm feeling frustrated, to say, I'm feeling frustrated right now and I just need a moment, right? Very, very powerful for them to understand their own emotions. Yes, you're feeling sad. Yes, you're feeling happy. This is what happy feels like. If you watch the Temple Grandin movie, and her aunt took pictures, and she started with pictures of herself, of, smile, and took a picture of it and said, this is Temple happy, so that Temple could understand, oh, these are emotions and they're tied to what this jumbled feeling in my gut feels like, so that she would begin to understand and have a perspective of herself. And then, of course, the next thing is to turn that around and look at other people. I can remember them constantly cutting out magazines, and therapists cutting out magazines and having new pictures, new stimuli for my child, and saying, them showing a picture and saying, what is she feeling? And, be like a picture of a kid on a roller coaster, like, and, oh, she's feeling scared, so that he could begin to understand and orient to people's faces, so that when we were on the playground and when someone was crying, he would know, okay, they're hurt or they're sad, or, all those different gradations. Really important, because we want our children to be empathetic and to understand emotions, because then we're going to get into thinking through, okay, mom looks mad right now. What did I do, or did I do something that created that look on mom? And even more powerful, is there something I could do to change the way mom looks? Oh my goodness. Then you've got them orienting into people. Pretty important. Physical states is another area of cognition that we can teach our kids lessons. Understanding, I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling cold. I'm feeling hot. Do you know that still there are times when my son flips cold and hot? It was a real problem when he was little. And while he gets it, he still sometimes flips the word. He understands the difference between hot and cold, but sometimes he'll say the opposite one. And then I go, dude, stop and think about it. Is that really what you... No, I'm hot. I said it was cold, but I'm hot. So understanding physical states, very powerful. They understand it in themselves and then recognize it in other people. Very powerful. Then we work on thinking. The whole idea of teaching what is thinking and how to think. In order to get this done, I need to think about this first. It's very, very much an important stepping stone before we get to executive functions. Understanding the difference between thinking and knowing. When you think something, right? There's room for it to be wrong. But when you know something, what kind of facts does it take to know something? And there's a whole section of lessons on false beliefs that first they teach the fun lessons, by the way, where they'll take a toy and take a box that has, like a cootie game, and it has the cootie pictures on the outside, and they'll say to the child, what is in this box? And they've only ever known cooties to be in the box, so they say it's the cootie game, and then they open it up and there's a sandwich inside. And they talk about the fact, and they do this with hundreds of different things, cereal boxes and different kinds of things. They talk about the fact of, why did you think it was inside the box? Well, because on the box it said this. Yes, but is that what was actually in it? No, there was a sandwich in that. And sometimes we look at things and we make assumptions and we think that something's in there, but it's different than knowing it when you actually have physical evidence to know that something's there. Because then you can get into false beliefs that are, much harder to get your fingers around, like when somebody believes that somebody doesn't like them, right? Much more gray area. And we teach the senses to our kids so that we can begin to do sensory perspective taking, which we're going to be talking about a lot tomorrow. But imagine, first you got to teach your children, I see, because that's how I know that something is, because I saw it. I can hear things. I can touch them and feel them. I can smell things, all of our different senses, right? And then they begin to understand that what they can see, somebody sitting over here may not be able to see. And what they can hear, someone in another room may not be able to hear. What they can smell, maybe somebody else can't hear. And this is the beginning of perspective taking, because with the senses, it's a little bit more concrete. Really, really powerful and fun. I can remember sitting around the table with my son and having lemon in a cup and him smelling it. And, what is it? It's a lemon. How do you know? Because I can smell it. And then later on, I would be in the other room and they would say, so does mom know what's in this cup? No. Why? Because she can't smell it and she can't see it and she can't hear us. But I could, because I was listening on the monitor. Preferences, which are different than desires. What kinds of things do we prefer? Because, maybe there's a phone and there's a bottle of water and I like them both, but which one do I prefer in this moment? They're both good, but I prefer the phone in this moment, and teaching them their preferences and other people's preferences. Then we get into, and this is something that is for the older kids. We don't work on this with the younger, you're not going to work on this for a child who's under 5, but deception. The whole idea of the fact that they can tell a lie and that someone else can tell a lie. One of my Facebook friends posted over the weekend about, they said, I just needed to post this because I was talking to a friend and my child lied. And she said, and my friend just totally didn't get it, how excited I was and how thrilled. And, when on the trip, and I'm going to talk about the trip in a little while, I did have an experience where a family member got very, very out of sorts about the fact that my child told a lie about something, and got very upset with me because I didn't do anything about it. And later on, and I didn't even react to it, I just was like, they're like, well, aren't you going to do something? And I said, no. And there was, they were having some emotions about it. The fact that I was not going to, horsewhip him or something for having told a lie. I did deal with it later on in talking with him, but I wasn't going to do it publicly, and when I talked to him about it later on, I said, okay, I need for you to tell me the truth because you know that mommy values the truth more than anything. And he was, and I said, you're not going to get punished as long as you tell me the truth, because to me, it's much more important that A, my child be able to tell a lie and be able to do it believably, because it may save his life at some point, and B, that my child trust me and not other people. You know what I'm saying? So I keep in my priorities, right? But this person was not happy with me. My life isn't determined by them. In any case, later on, another family member said, okay, what just happened? Like, what was that? I just have to ask. And I said, well, I want my child to be able to lie, so I'm not going to publicly humiliate him for when he does it. And, I will have a talk with him, but our children need to be able to lie. And they sometimes call this the white lies. How are you going to play a game if you can't do it? Who's going to play poker with you if you can't tell a white lie? But there are other times when it literally is a matter of life and death that our kids be able to tell a lie. So, there you have it. It's very much individual and to what you think is appropriate, and she clearly thought that I was out to lunch. But I know I'm not. And most autism parents get it, and they go, yeah, no, my kid lied. Woohoo! It's all good. And he lied to an adult, which is a great thing, right? Right? Because I need for him to be able to lie to adults. It's part of life. And then, of course, our last thing, which we just have been talking about, is talking about intentions. What are your intentions? My intentions are to raise a child who is successful in life and able to live on his own and to be productive and be a productive member of society. Now, is it my intention to raise a hoodlum who is going to lie his way through life and be like a John Lovitz, afterthought? No, that is not my intention. But it is my intention to have a child who is safe and productive. And we teach children about what their intentions are in doing something and what other people's intentions are. And that sometimes other people's intentions are not the same as ours, and sometimes they're not good. You know, the person who comes up to you and says, hey, kid, you know, do you want a piece of candy? Their intentions are not good. And to be able to read and understand other people's intentions based on things that they know and based on things that they think and based on physical states and emotions and desires and sensory information, all of those different things can feed in. And so you begin to see how we take information in with our brain, and a lot of times it's sensory information, things that we're seeing and hearing and touching and feeling. We take this information in, we sort it through the computer in our brain and spit out an answer and say, you know, I don't want to spend time with this person. They're not being nice to me. This is a safe place to be. This is not a safe place to be. This is what I need to say to accomplish what I need to accomplish in this moment, right? That's all cognition, putting that all together, all those different things. So you can see all the different things that you can work on with your child. And while you're having a break by the pool, you can pull out 2 different colors of popsicles and say, which do you want to have, the red one or the purple one? Woohoo! We're working on desires. Or, you know, you can pull out the beach bag and say, what do we think is inside the bag? And why do you think that? Oh, you saw me packing the beach bag, so you saw the things going into the bag, right? Really, you know, your child could be at any level and you could be working on these things, because with a very small child, a baby, you can work on desires and emotions, because at that point you're just even languaging and saying, oh, you know, you're feeling sad. So at any point you could be working on this stuff. All right, I've gone on too long. We need to take a break. I also want to remind you before it gets too late that Elysian Fields Farms, it's not too late to sign up for their Horseboy event. And you can go to their website, find out about when it is, sign up for it. Really amazing opportunity, not only to screen the film, the Horseboy film, with the makers and the originators of the Horseboy technique, but then you also have the opportunity that weekend, if you want to participate in it's like a once-of-a-lifetime opportunity to participate and learn the basic techniques for doing Horseboy. Now, keep in mind, this is not an event to take your child to. They're not going to do the Horseboy technique with your child. They want to teach you how to do the Horseboy technique. So if you are a horse lover and it's something that you are interested in, the connection between horses and autism, I really encourage you to see if you can get to this event at Elysian Fields Farms. Really amazing, amazing event. We are going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about this trip that I went on and the coming back and what that was like and about. So stick with us.
I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are here at the Gluten Free Expo. We're really excited about it. Can't wait to give you a look at all the tasty things there are to try. We are here at the Breads from Anna booth. You have been helping my family for a long time. So first of all, tell us a little bit about how this came to be.
Okay, well, I was diagnosed at age 16 with type 1 diabetes. And then in my 30s, I got celiac disease. And a lot of the products that existed at that point just weren't working for me. So I made my first mix, which was gluten, soy, rice, and nut-free. And then my sister was diagnosed with celiac, and she has Hashimoto's, so she can't digest lactose. And she was allergic to corn. So I made a mix for her, and I had these 2 little mixes on my website, and then the autism community started reaching out to me for a yeast-free mix. And then my nephew was diagnosed with autism. So we have stuck to really trying to make our products as free as possible of the top 8 allergens. We're free of so many of those trigger foods that they work well for these kids. And the bean flours we use are pre-soaked, so they're easier to digest.
And it tastes good. That's the most important thing. It tastes really good.
And I truly believe there's healing that happens from the pleasure that you get from eating, and I want people to feel that they're not making a sacrifice by having to be on a special diet.
Where can people get them?
There is a store locator on our website, so you can check that out. And we encourage people to ask stores to bring it in if they have a store they like to shop at that we're not in.
We are here right now at the Bob's Red Mill Natural Foods booth. You know, you've heard me talk about them on the show before. I love them.
The two hot items are coconut flour and almond flour. They're just rocking because they please a lot of audiences. They've got the gluten-free. They please the paleo. They're not grain, so they can please a lot of audiences. And as far as the mixes, you know, we're always the pizza crust, the cornbread, and then our oats are still just right up there. So, and we have over 100 products now that are certified gluten-free. So we're trying to please all audiences with that.
We are here at one of the most popular booths, the Udi's booth. Tell us some of the things that might be good for a GFCF diet.
Perfect. So all of our products, with the exception of the cookies and the brownie bites, are milk-free, casein-free, and they're made in separate, dedicated facilities. So basically anything here other than cookies and brownie bites is good. For kids, the granola, because it's chocolate. And then we have things like double vanilla muffins that can double as cupcakes. And if you can do like a sugar-free frosting, milk-free frosting, then it's even better.
We are here with the author of Gluten is My and a very incendiary title.
Well, when I was diagnosed with celiac 2.5 years ago, my initial reaction was, "What? Are you serious that I can no longer eat a major food group?" It blew my mind, and everywhere I looked, I found inspirational, yay, yay, and I was like, this will not do. And I instantly started my blog, Gluten is My out of total craziness, and it developed into a book.
The subtitle of it is Rants, Recipes, and Ridiculousness for the Gluten-Free. So a little bit of everything then, stories and recipes.
Yes, it's personal stories. It's a guide on how to get through this time in your life. It's also, there's information if your child is diagnosed, there's travel information, and there's also a chapter on the future of gluten-free and what it means for all of us that are suffering through a lack of donuts.
We are here at the Enjoy Life booth. Tell us about what Plentals are. We just tried it, and it rocked our world.
Well, Plentals are a lentil-based snack. And the great thing about Plentals is 3 of the 4 flavors are dairy-free. So there's no gluten, there's no casein. All of our products are gluten-free and free of the 8 common allergens, which means they're free of egg, dairy, wheat, soy, peanut, tree nut, fish, and shellfish.
But it's not the only product that you guys have. You have a wide range of products that you guys carry, right?
That's right. We make 38 different products. Again, everything that we make is certified gluten-free as well as free of the 8 common allergens. So the great thing about Enjoy Life is when you see the Enjoy Life red logo on any package, you know it's safe, and you know it's safe for everybody. And, a lot of people ask us, well, how do you make it taste so good? Because if it doesn't taste great, no one cares. And so we like to tell them it's a little bit of magic, it's a whole lot of love that we're able to do this and replicate all these different flavors. So, for instance, we have a brand new line of decadent bars, which are s'mores, cinnamon bun, cherry cobbler, and chocolate sun butter. And again, all free of the 8 common allergens. The other thing with all of our products, they're all verified non-GMO. So we have the most gluten-free products that are verified non-GMO by the Non-GMO Project.
For more information about a healthy, tasty, gluten-free diet, make sure to watch our cooking segment, What's Left, co-sponsored by Taka. Welcome back. And it's like Emily has a Vulcan mind meld with me, and she played that clip. So I'm about to come back and talk about the trip that my son and I went on, because one of the things I want to talk about was trying to eat GFCF on the road. Every once in a while I get stupid ideas because it's my job to do that, frankly. Right? Sometimes I get underslept, and sometimes it ends up in its genius, and other times it's just really stupid ideas. And as most of you know, my mother unfortunately passed away in December, and I needed to go and finish helping take care of her possessions and put a period at the end of that sentence, which was a really hard thing to do. And I'd been putting it off for a while. And she also left my son a piano. The piano. Like sometime there will be a book or a short story or a movie or something, the piano. And, you know, it was a whole thing about how are we going to get the piano here, and there were many different ways to get the piano there, but since we both had to go anyway, and I really wanted to take some time with my son, and I'm somebody who, when stuff happens, it takes me a while to process. That's my processing speed. And I really believed, because any other time that something big has happened in my life, I used to be a stand-up comedian and I would travel a lot and be in the car a lot. It is a creative place for me, a place to work things out in my head. And I thought, you know, this is a great opportunity for me to work through some of that stuff, you know, stupid idea. But also for me, with my son, you know, our days are filled with so many other things that distract us from each other, that if we were driving the piano back in a U-Haul truck, I know, stop the sentence right there. What are you thinking, right? And everyone has said that to me, and I knew it before I did it, but for whatever romantic idea in my head, I was just, you know how sometimes you just get set on something, you get like a horn on your head that says, no, I need to do this, I don't know why. Okay, so we flew out, spent some time, and then we were going to drive the piano back. It's a recipe for disaster, right? It's like a Bob Hope on the road bad movie. I will say that, and I promised my husband, I said, wait, I'll call you from Wyoming crying and saying, can you fly out here and come and get us because I can't make it home. I didn't ask him to fly out to Wyoming, but I did call him crying from Wyoming saying, why did I say I would do this? You know, it's just not that much fun. But there were some really amazing things that happened along the way. And part of it was born from the fact that it was just really difficult to eat. And you know, where we were staying in Iowa, we were very close to Iowa City, and because we'd been several times as my mom was sick and ultimately dying, you know, I kind of knew where I needed to shop, and there were two places that I could shop there in Iowa City. One of them being the local Hy-Vee, which it's a grocery store that has an amazing array of gluten-free products. I wish that our regular grocery store here carried what they do in Iowa. I have to say, you Iowans, very progressive there at the Hy-Vee. And also, they have a lovely life-saving store called the New Pioneer Co-op in Iowa City. There are many branches of it, but the Coralville one in particular that we had been to on many occasions in the last year. Okay, so at one point we were out and about, and we'd already had several storms in Iowa, and we were a couple of blocks away from the New Pioneer Co-op and doing something, and in the back of my head I was like, oh, I'm going to see if I can wangle a trip to the New Pioneer Co-op before we have to go back home. And just then we were in a van, and an alarm went off on my phone, it went off on my son's phone, it went off on my sister's phone, it went off on my brother's phone, and it went off on the radio in the car, and the car was off. I don't even know how that happens, but apparently they have something worked out in Iowa. And so there was a siren, and, you know, it had been raining earlier in the day, but it wasn't raining right then, and, you know, overcast skies, but nothing. Anyway, it was a tornado, and it was an actual funnel tornado. It wasn't just like, oh, everybody be concerned, and it was everyone take cover. And I remember looking outside the van and going, I don't really see what the big deal is about, but there were sirens, and you could hear everybody's phones going off with this alert, and on my phone it says, take cover now. And I'm thinking, you know, does that mean we go home? What does this mean? And anyway, my brother, we were closer to the New Pioneer Co-op, but we weren't that far from the Hy-Vee, and my brother said, let's go to the Hy-Vee. And as we pulled out of where we were to go in the direction of the Hy-Vee, it was like all of a sudden we were in the Wizard of Oz. I'm not kidding you. It was crazy windy, and I looked up and you could see this big cloud, and it looked like a giant butt. Because it was a line in the middle of it, and the clouds were moving in other directions, and it was not good, right? And I said, let's not make it to the Hy-Vee. Let's go to the New Pioneer Co-op. It's much closer. I know right where it is. I'm not even from this place, and I know where it is. Well, my brother knew where it was from, too, but it was, you know, 2 blocks away, but back roads to this, not a main street. Paved, you know. So he headed in that direction, and we just had basically gotten 1 block o'clock and torrential downpour and wind buffeting the van, and I'm there in the back seat with my son, and I started to get really concerned. And my son, his anxiety level was ratcheting up, and I said, it's going to be okay. You're here with Mom. Just hang on to me. I moved closer to him, had my arm around him. I said, it's going to be okay. And my sister's looking at me, and I'm looking at her. My brother's driving, and he couldn't see anything. He couldn't see 5 feet ahead of him. And because it wasn't a major street, there's no street lights or anything, so it's the middle of the day. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's pitch black out all of a sudden and you can't see anything. It was that moment in the tornado movie when they say cow, basically, except that the cow had not gone by. But there was other stuff that was debris that was flying. And I thought, okay, this is serious business. And sirens everywhere still. And my phone going, take cover now. So we finally got into the parking lot of the New Pioneer because we were just a minute and a half away from it, but it took us several minutes to get there. And we got into the parking lot, and my brother and my sister got out of the van, but the van doors in the back, for whatever reason, would not open. And somebody said it was because of all the pressure from the rain. I don't know, but we could not. I tried my door. We tried my son's door. We could not get out. My brother had to come back. And in the meantime, my sister had been standing there at the door of the New Pioneer, and apparently a guy had greeted her there and said, we're not open right now because I don't know if you know there's a tornado. And my sister said, yes, we need to take cover. And so she was having that whole discussion, and my brother came back and opened the door to the van and got us out and stayed to close the van. But my sister was already in the store, and as I got out of the van, and my brother was saying, run for it, and I sent my son on ahead. I said, run as fast as you can to Aunt Sarah. And I heard this horrible noise. And, they always talk about how there's like a train whistle noise that comes with a tornado. And I literally thought, when we were stuck in the van with the doors not opening, I thought, this is it. Never in my life have I felt that before. And then when he ran from me, and my brother and I kind of looked at each other, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is bad. And he said, run. And I ran into the store. He stayed for the second to close the van. Anyway, they ushered us into the New Pioneer and had us run to the back of the store, and then back along the store, and then down the stairs into their basement. They were harboring about 60 people in their basement, and we all had to stay down there for about 45 minutes. And once we got in the basement, I knew we were safe. And then, of course, my son is so predictable now because in an emergency, he's a lot like I am, cool as a cucumber, but then as soon as the emergency is over, we both fall to pieces. And I couldn't, because the emergency was still going on, because we got down in the basement and we were all out of breath, and it was cold in the store, but we'd worked up a steam running, but we were drenched. We were absolutely soaked to the skin. So we were sweating, but cold and shivering and a little bit, freaked out. So, and we were in the very small quarters, basically in their basement where they have things stacked up. We just happened to be the only place where they would have gluten-free stuff, right? So I knew we weren't going to starve to death if anything happened. But, so very claustrophobic, and hot and cold, and my son got emotional, and then I got emotional, but we were fine from that moment on. In any case, and then when it was all over, and they passed out snacks while we were stuck down there. They were very sweet. We have to say, huge thumbs up to the New Pioneer for the lovely array of organic and fabulous produce and all the gluten-free things that they have at the New Pioneer Co-op, and all very affordable. And the life-saving basement, and the fact that they handed out snacks and had coffee and other things for people to drink. It was really quite lovely. And so when it was all over, we went upstairs and shopped, and it was truly lovely. And I do enjoy shopping at the New Pioneer Co-op. But the rest of the trip, once we got in the truck to come back across the country, I have to say it was tougher than tough. And I had made the decision, because we were in a U-Haul, and I didn't want to pack a cooler and go through, because we had flown out. I didn't want to go through all that nonsense. I was like, we're just going to eat. We're going to stop at restaurants so that we get rest. I'm not going to be, stopping and we're not going to be going to grocery stores. We're going to stop and eat at restaurants on the way back. Oh my goodness. I want to tell you that I assumed that the country would have changed sufficiently enough so that people would understand. Celiac has done so much for gluten-free, and I noticed that the landscape was vastly different coming across the country, that there are windmills everywhere, and in Wyoming and Nebraska and in Utah, and you go, okay, so we're really getting mindful to these kinds of things, but somehow the gluten-free, organic, not having a lot of chemicals in things thing has not come to a certain stretch of road on I-80 yet in this century. It was really, really tough. And I will tell you that I got stuck at one point, had nothing to feed my child, and in the middle of nowhere, there are still long stretches where you can drive and not hit a grocery store for a couple of hours. It was really, and even when you hit the grocery store, they don't know from gluten-free. So, I'm in a truck stop Googling ballpark franks to find out if they're gluten-free. Turns out they are. That doesn't mean that they're free of other things. Rough. Really, really rough. Not my favorite thing in terms of food. We did find some pockets, though, of some amazing places. In Nebraska, we found a lovely health food store, Healthy Heart, and we have to give them a big thumbs up because we bought Ian's frozen fish sticks there, and they heated them up for us because we didn't have a microwave in the truck. I don't think I was supposed to tell that, but they were very kind enough to do that for us. But anyway, I think it was supposed to be a secret, but really spectacular. And we found a couple of other nice places along the way that we were able to eat some really healthy, beneficial things. But a lot of it was really rough. I will say that for the first day in the truck, my son was miserable, and I would point things out, and he wasn't enjoying it. It took to the second day, and then he got excited about the things that he was seeing and the mountains that he saw, and he learned so much. And I got a kids atlas so that each state that we went into, we were talking about what the flower of the state is, what the capital of the state is, what their state motto is, what the big cities were. And I do think that that's invaluable. I think he was at the right age, at the right time, at the right skill level, that he will remember some aspects of that trip. Maybe not the whole thing, and it wasn't the big, aha that I had hoped for, but you know what? It seldom is, right? In any case, it was a great time with him. He gained more responsibility. One of the things that I said to him, because he's 10 now, is that it was really hard because you had to get up into the truck, and I said to him, when you get out of the truck, it's your responsibility to push the thing down on the lock and close the door. That's going to be your responsibility. And I was prompting him to do it the first couple of days on the trip. And then there was one place that we stopped in Wyoming, and we stopped at the hotel, and we got our stuff out of the truck, and there was nobody else around us, and he had gotten out of the truck, and I'd been at the back of the truck getting the suitcase out. We went up to the hotel room and then came back down because we were going to go to a grocery store. And so we were standing on the balcony at the hotel, and I looked down and I saw that he had left the door open to the truck. And I was about to say something when he saw it, and he said, "Oh no, I didn't take responsibility. I didn't do the thing that I was responsible." I've never heard him use the word responsibility before, even though I've and he ran down the stairs and ran into the parking lot from behind a car without looking. And of course, fortunately, there was nobody around. And then we had a whole big talk about that, about, safety first, that I was thrilled that he was concerned that he had left the door to the truck. Excuse me, but you can't run across the street or run across the parking lot without looking first. But the fallout of it, and, fortunately, the heavens were looking out for us, and he was okay and everything was okay in the truck. But the fallout for it was that he brought up a conversation, and he said, I'm 10 now. I got to be better about this kind of stuff. You really trusted me to do that. And he even said, I'm always telling you I'm not a baby anymore, and so I need to not act like a baby anymore. And I thought, wow, that may have been worth the price of admission to this really crazy trip that I have no idea why I did. In any case, we got back okay, and everybody survived it, fortunately. And it was an amazing time that I will remember, and hopefully that he will remember. But we're back.
And we've got some really exciting shows for you this week. And one of the things that I'm really excited about tomorrow on the show, we're going to have David Humphreys on, and he is the owner of Kirkman Labs, one of the most amazing places for you to go to get supplements and get information about biomedical information, not just for autism, but for everything under the sun. And David's specifically going to be coming and talking with us about prenatal care. I know many of you have written in the past about the fact that if you've got a child on the spectrum, you have some concerns about siblings and whether you're going to have more children. And he's got some really important information about supplements that you want to be considering when you're getting pregnant and when you are pregnant, and some really exciting research that he's been involved in about looking at the risk factors in children that are a year old. We talk all the time about how important it is to get early diagnosis, and that really, it used to be that they weren't even looking at kids until age 2, but now they're starting to look much younger. And he's got some important research that he's been involved with, talking about at recognizing those risk factors in children that are a year old. So that's going to be tomorrow at 10:20 Pacific time here on the show. David Humphreys from KirkmanLabs.com. And if you have questions, you can be writing in during the night for David, but really having an amazing expert here to talk about those kinds of things. So that will be tomorrow. And then, of course, we also have Evelyn Gould back tomorrow. I don't know about you, but I could use a little bit of Evelyn Gould rearranging. We do Making Room with Evelyn. So that will be tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, Ask Dr. Doreen, and we'll have Nancy Allspaw-Jackson with us. And also, we're going to be having Lauren from Brush with Love. She sets up environments that are sensory friendly for our kids. So that'll be really exciting. On Thursday, we have Angela Persicki with us. On Friday, we have Dr. Adele Nadowski and Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with us, answering this plethora of questions that you guys have sent in over the break. Want to encourage you, again, don't forget, it's not too late to register Elysian Fields Farms. We hope that you will participate in their upcoming 2 events with Horseboy that they have, the screening of the film and then the workshop that they're going to be doing an entire weekend training people in the Horseboy technique. Really fabulous. The website is there so that you can check that out. It's not too late to register. I encourage you to do that. Really a fabulous opportunity. We're pretty much out of time here. But before we go, I just want to thank you guys all for participating over the break. I'm really excited to be back. We've got a summer of things to talk about and how we're going to help our kids get progress, because they deserve it and we deserve it. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.